where we are is in a very strong place, giving the President of the United States maximum options. And from the beginning, from this podium, we haven't stated how long it will take. Our will is endless. Ultimately, the President gets to determine the end state of those objectives, right? But what he's said continually, and I want the American people of our President, which is to not pursue nuclear weapons and come out and state as such. As far as his status, that's not something I can comment on right now.
In the long run, oil supplies will be dramatically more secure without the threat of Iranian ships, drones, missiles, nuclear menace, or anything. So the Strait of Hormuz is going to remain safe. We have a lot of Navy ships there. We have the best equipment in the world, inspecting for mines. Again, most of their ships are down at the bottom of the sea, but we will hit them so hard that it will not be possible for them or anybody else helping them to ever recover that section of the world.
Last night was the worst night Tehran has ever seen. That is not a metaphor. That is what residents of the Iranian capital are saying right now in real time as smoke rises from burning oil facilities and a phenomenon being called black rain falls from the skies above one of the oldest cities on Earth. And here is what makes this moment so difficult to fully process. This is not the beginning of the conflict. It is not even close to the beginning. What is happening right now over Tehran is the escalation of something that already crossed every red line anyone thought existed 11 days ago. So let us start there, because to understand tonight, you need to understand the night this all began. February 28th, 2026. Somewhere high above Iranian airspace, aircraft so advanced they do not appear on radar crossed into Iranian territory without a single alarm being raised. No intercept, no response, just silence at 30,000 feet, and then precision. The strikes that followed were not designed to send a message, they were designed to decapitate, and they succeeded. By the time the sun rose over Tehran on March 1st, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled the Islamic Republic with absolute authority for over 3 decades, the man who had outlasted sanctions and assassinations and proxy wars, was dead, killed in his own residence, in his own city, on the opening night of an operation the United States had quietly named Operation Epic Fury, and Israel had called Operation Roaring Lion. Iranian state television confirmed it, and in doing so, announced to the world that something fundamental had just changed. Within the first 24 hours alone, U.S. Central Command reported over 1,000 targets struck, not across weeks, not across a campaign, in a single day. Alongside Khamenei, multiple senior military commanders were killed, including the IRGC chief and Iran's defense minister. The strikes had not just removed the head of the regime, they had gutted its entire command structure in a single night. CENTCOM posted footage of B-2 stealth bombers and B-1 Lancers and used a phrase that left no ambiguity about intent. Yesterday's massive U.S. airstrikes cut off the snake's head. Now ask yourself the question every serious analyst was asking in the hours that followed. If the head is gone, what does the body do next? Iran answered on March 2nd. In what the regime called Operation True Promise 4, Iranian forces launched missiles at 14 American military bases across the region. 7 U.S. service members were killed. It was Iran's largest direct Iranian military strike against American forces in history, and it was Iran's attempt to demonstrate that decapitation had not meant paralysis. Washington's response was not de-escalation, it was acceleration. The strikes intensified across all 26 Iranian provinces. High-intensity bombardments targeted Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, and Kermanshah. IRGC headquarters across the country were leveled, naval facilities on the Gulf of Oman were destroyed, and at sea, the picture was equally devastating for Tehran. General Dane Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, confirmed that over 50 Iranian naval vessels had been sunk, including Shahid Soleimani-class and Jamaran-class corvettes that had long been considered the backbone of Iran's maritime deterrent. Then, on March 7th, President Trump posted something on Truth Social that stopped diplomatic circles cold: unconditional surrender. Not a ceasefire proposal, not an offer to negotiate, a demand posted in capital letters for the complete and unconditional surrender of the Iranian regime, the kind of language not used by an American president since the Pacific theater of World War II. Trump also claimed that U.S. forces had largely destroyed Iran's navy and called directly on the Iranian people, not their government, their people, to, in his words, take over your government. 3 days later, on March 10th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood before cameras and announced that the campaign was entering its most intense phase yet. B-1B Lancers and F-35s were now hitting deeply buried ballistic missile silos, the underground facilities that Iran had spent years and billions of dollars building specifically because they believed no air power could reach them. Hegseth stated plainly that the United States would not stop until Iran was, in his words, decisively defeated. And now, on March 11th, 2026, we arrive at tonight. The total number of targets struck since February 28th now exceeds 5,000, according to General Kane. According to analysts at Britannica and Special Eurasia, approximately 75% of Iran's mobile missile launchers, the weapons Tehran considered its ultimate retaliatory trump card, have been neutralized. The International Institute for Strategic Studies assessed this week that the U.S. and Israel have established what it called total air supremacy, operating, in their words, with impunity over Iranian airspace. Think about what that means. One of the most heavily defended countries in the Middle East, a nation that spent decades building layered air defense systems specifically because they believed no air power could reach them, can no longer meaningfully contest its own skies. The aircraft doing this work is worth understanding. B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, B-52 Stratospheres, F-22 Raptors, F-35s, A-10 Warthogs for lower altitude ground attack, and something that has received far less coverage than it deserves: the deployment of AI-piloted collaborative combat aircraft, autonomous systems operating alongside manned fighters in real combat conditions at a scale never seen before. The munitions include 2,000-pound GPS-guided bunker busters and precision strike missiles designed to reach targets buried deep underground. This is not a strike campaign. This is the systematic architectural demolition of a military. But here is where the picture becomes far more complicated. Because while the military campaign has, by almost every conventional measure, succeeded beyond any prior projection, the political question remains almost entirely unanswered. Iran's Interim Leadership Council, assembled hastily after Khamenei's death and led by pragmatist Ali Larijani alongside President Masoud Pezeshkian, is attempting to hold the state together. Pezeshkian called the killing of Khamenei a declaration of war against all Muslims, but as Reuters noted, Larijani's presence signals something more pragmatic might be possible. A man associated with negotiation rather than confrontation, trying to find a path that doesn't end in total collapse. Whether that path exists is a different question. Al Jazeera put the core problem bluntly this week. Can the United States manufacture a political alternative from the air? It is the question that has haunted every American intervention since Iraq. Bombing can destroy a regime. It cannot build a replacement for it. And the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard, has not surrendered. It was built specifically not to. Its command structure is deliberately decentralized. Its loyalists are embedded deep in Iranian society. Its proxy networks stretched across Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq. Geopolitical analysts warn that even with Khamenei gone and the military degraded, the IRGC retains the capacity to wage a long-term insurgency and to activate those proxy networks at will. Defense Secretary Hegseth claimed this week that Hezbollah and the Houthis remain on the sidelines. Analysts are not as confident. A full Hezbollah mobilization from southern Lebanon, combined with an intensified Houthi campaign against Red Sea shipping, would open 2 additional fronts simultaneously, at a moment when the political cost of escalation is already extraordinarily high. And then there is the economic dimension, which is quietly becoming as dangerous as the military one. Iranian oil refineries are on fire. The black rain falling over Tehran is toxic precipitation, confirmed by the World Health Organization, which has issued a health emergency alert for the capital. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes daily, sits at the edge of an active war zone. Markets are already experiencing severe volatility. A sustained closure of the strait, deliberate or otherwise, would send shockwaves through every economy on the planet within days. Internationally, the United Kingdom eventually allowed U.S. use of the Akrotiri base in Cyprus, though Prime Minister Keir Starmer limited authorization to strikes on missile programs only, a sign of how carefully allied governments are managing their exposure to this conflict. The European Union described Khamenei's death as a defining moment, while warning of dangerous regional destabilization. The United Nations expressed grave concern over the more than 100,000 already displaced and the humanitarian crisis now unfolding in Tehran. And then there is the report from The Guardian that sits apart from the military communiques and presidential posts. A strike in the Iranian city of Minab, an all-girls school, more than 160 children killed. The details of that report are difficult to hold alongside the language of strategic victory, and history tends not to forget them, regardless of how the larger conflict resolves. So here is where the world stands on the night of March 11th, 2026. The most powerful aerial campaign since the Second World War has dismantled the military architecture of a nation in under 2 weeks. The supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran is dead. His military commanders are dead. His navy is largely gone. His missile program is in ruins. And yet, the IRGC still fights. The proxy networks are still intact. The political vacuum at the top of Iran's power structure has no obvious answer, and the question of what comes after, what government, what order, what future, remains completely unanswered. The bombs will fall again tonight over Tehran. But the harder question, the one no bomb can answer, is what comes after the last one drops. And right now, no one in Washington, Jerusalem, or Tehran seems to know.